The Capital Confidential podcast is brought to you by the Times-Union, the leading newspaper in New York's capital region. Subscribe today or visit online at timesunion.com.
You want to deport an undocumented person? Start with me, because I'm an undocumented person.
How do we beat him in an election?
We will. I'm going to run against him.
I wish you would. I wish you would, Dad. I would.
There are things in here that are unobjectionable because they're not that effective. So yeah, sure, I'll vote for a distinctive license plate. Sure, why not?
Jim, you had your press conference at 4 o'clock.
You're having a press conference now?
That's
You're
right.
talking?
I'm having a press conference.
Well,
now.
is this your space here or is it public?
No, it's my space.
Oh, this is your
Don't
space.
interrupt.
Okay.
I'm David Lombardo, and this is the Capital Confidential podcast. For our first non-coup episode, we're taking a deep look at the structural challenges involved in legalizing marijuana through the legislative process and examining the states where it has been accomplished. Leading this journey is the Rockefeller Institute's Heather Trella, who recently published a report on this topic. Our conversation touched on the recent actions in Illinois, the unique circumstances in Vermont, and what's going on in New York. We began by talking about the effect of special interests on passing marijuana legislatively.
One of the reasons legislation is so hard, or has been traditionally so hard for states to pass with marijuana, is because it's a smaller group of people they're trying to influence. Interest groups like to be able to target specific people. It's much easier to influence 60 members of a legislature rather than the entire population.
Cheaper too.
And so interest groups are more easily, with legislatures, able to target individual members that they think might be vulnerable, that they think they can target their message to the particular communities they represent. It's much easier to kind of package the message to have the most impact.
Okay. And then when we're talking special interests, are we saying this is pro-marijuana advocates, or this anti? Who are the special interests involved in this?
It's both. And, it depends on the state, but in a lot of states you're seeing groups who are against marijuana. There are some outside groups that come in that are trying to influence, but there's also law enforcement, schools, teachers, administrations that are worried about pro-legalization. And then there's groups also from outside that have been organized, like the local chapters, that are pro, that are trying to make the argument that this is, going to help people with anxiety or PTSD, or just eliminate the black market.
Is there any difference in the effectiveness of maybe a quote-unquote grassroots organization that pops up organically in opposition or support versus the group that's moving state to state and this is what they do, either pushing or stopping?
They both have advantages. I'd say the local homegrown might have a little bit more credibility because they can say, we're members of these communities, we live here. But outside groups if they've done this before, they're good at it. They know what works, what doesn't work. They typically have more money and are already organized. So there's something said for being having done this in the past, so that you're ready to roll out the same message or similar message.
And one of the other challenges your report highlighted was kind of, the trepidation lawmakers have of heading out into the great unknown of marijuana legalization and the ramifications of that. So what are the ramifications that can come with marijuana legalization?
Yeah, because of the federal ban on marijuana, there's a lot we don't know. Okay. There hasn't been a lot of research done on marijuana, so we don't know long-term impacts, health concerns from using it. One of the big issues I've heard that a lot of people are concerned about is driving while under the influence.
Right.
There is no really accurate test for that, so people are concerned about additional car crashes as a result.
We had a hearing about that in New York as well. And that's, talking to some of our lawmakers here, that's one of the things that they point to over and over again. I think it's you need a tissue sample from the brain,
right, to
tell the effect, how high someone, I guess.
And it stays in your system for up to 30 days,
yeah.
So it's hard to tell when a person has used. Those, I'm not saying those aren't legitimate concerns, but those come up.
Well, if I'm a lawmaker, I can
yes.
totally imagine the idea of, I vote yes, and then, a few weeks later after legalization happens, there's a car accident in my district. It's like a Willie Horton thing
yes.
in the Dukakis race. So,
absolutely. Yeah. And, there's issues with increased use of children, by
right.
children, especially with something like edibles. Sometimes they look like candy. Kids may accidentally ingest them. And, yes, one child overdosing or getting sick, one child getting sick is going to be enough. And there's public safety issues as well. Part of the problem with the federal ban is that a lot of dispensaries are cash-only businesses. Right. So they become a target for crime and theft. And so that's not directly the marijuana itself, but it's putting it into a community.
Even though we've seen, at least in New York, Siena has done a lot of polling on this issue, and they see that there's a majority support statewide for this. Does that potentially alleviate concerns, or statewide is not the right way to look at it? Is it you have to narrow it down to what is in the backyard of an individual legislator? Well,
marijuana is politically popular. It's hard to tell how important that is for how people vote.
Oh, that's a good point.
It's, everyone thinks marijuana is a great idea until you put it in their backyard. I mean, even the states where they have legalized, there's the NIMBY problem. Everyone thinks they like marijuana until a dispensary wants to come into town. So I think it's hard for legislators to know if their vote on marijuana is going to influence a person's vote toward or against them. Is this a divisive issue for people? I would say for the most case, probably not.
Right.
People are more concerned about bread and butter issues. That's why the initiative process is a little bit easier for states, because they already have the will of people.
Right.
They have said, yes, we want this, then legislators have to implement. It's harder to do it the opposite way.
And the governor kind of made this case yesterday during a press conference, talking about some of the outstanding progressive issues on the table and saying how you might have majority support, but the minority cares very passionately
yes.
in these issues, and they might be more motivated to vote, where someone might support marijuana legalization, but it's not the top issue for
exactly.
them. They have other concerns. It's interesting that you put it like that. So initiative has been by far the vast majority
yep.
of the way that this is getting done, not an option in New York, right?
Right.
Because we just don't have a referendum.
Correct.
And in these other states, when initiative comes up, is it legislators who say, let's put this question to the voters? Do voters somehow get it on the ballot? What's been the case of getting the votes?
In a lot of cases, interest groups play a role on both sides.
I'm shocked to hear that. Shocked.
So in a lot of times, interest groups actually help get things on the ballot for the initiatives. It's usually a signature requirement for each state, but it can be more grassroots in states that have initiative and referendum. Some legislators do back it. For the most part, though, it has been less. It's frustration with the legislature not doing something on the issue that has kind of forced the initiative process to be used.
When initiatives have been used, does it then fall upon the legislature to at least craft rules and stuff, or has it been administrations that have been left to craft rules?
It depends on how specific the initiative is. In some states, they're pretty outlined the broad strokes of what the program would look like, and then it's just kind of filling in the details. But it's been a mix. Sometimes it's the legislature that's to pass laws. Sometimes it's to an agency that's going to oversee this to kind of come up with the policies and procedures.
Gotcha. One of the states that did act legislatively wasn't maybe the broad comprehensive plan that we're considering in New York was Vermont. Can you talk a little bit about what their legislature actually did approve?
Yeah, so Vermont is an interesting outlier in
most cases.
Yes, and especially in recreational marijuana, because they were the first to allow recreational marijuana legislatively, but they did not create a commercial market for it. So basically they decriminalized marijuana and they allowed home grow, but they did not set up any dispensaries, any regulatory system for taxation. So it's completely different from what most states are looking to do. Vermont is actually, I think, reconsidering where they currently are to see if potentially they could add some level of a commercial market. They're not there yet, but they're at least looking into it. So this is kind of a first step for them.
Is that just because they're have some sort of libertarian streak in Vermont?
It may have been just simply, a trial balloon. Let's see how this goes and see where the support is, and then throw out a more comprehensive program. They're a pretty small state, so they may just not have thought there was the need yet for a commercial market.
And so that just means who's selling marijuana?
You can't sell marijuana.
So I mean, is that just illegal drug dealers who are selling marijuana then?
Probably, yeah. I mean, there's no commercial market, so you can grow for yourself, and I think there's probably some stipulation for giving, a few plants in a family or whatever. But
when Christmas comes around, what's one to do?
So, but yeah, they don't have. So yes, there's still a black market in Vermont.
In recent weeks, we've had change on this issue in Illinois. Can you talk about what they were able to do and through the legislative process?
Sure. I'd like to think Illinois did that because I wrote my piece, because I said it was a state will figure it out soon enough, and a week later they did. Illinois seemed to kind of come out of nowhere with this, but they didn't. They have actually been working on legalizing recreational marijuana for at least 2 years. Not actively in the legislatures, but a number of legislators have been working on crafting legislation and bringing together coalitions. So before they really voted on this, they did their homework. They brought together groups who may be opposed to it to try to build consensus on what would you need to see in this bill to get this through. The governor also ran on this issue. So the governor kind of made this a priority as well. So there was finally kind of the perfect storm for this to be introduced and voted on in the legislature.
I almost started laughing during that just because of thinking of legislators doing their homework in advance, laying the groundwork, building consensus to pass something, and then that's just not how it played out in New York. It was just like one day, you know what we should do?
Well, it's not how it traditionally works most places either. So it was a process to get to, and Illinois does have potentially, it has not been signed yet by the governor, but all indications are he's going to sign it, a very progressive bill for trying to deal with equity, for making sure that communities that have been disproportionately impacted will have a voice.
Yeah, so how do they distribute revenues? Are they saying that certain commercial opportunities are available? What's in the bill?
Yeah, they are, in the bill there's certain kind of like breaks to bring in people of color and people who so they can get into the business. There'll be special waiving of fees. There's going to be training programs implemented. So they're really trying to bring in as many people. The marijuana industry has traditionally been dominated by white men, and so this is in big business. Yep. And so this is an opportunity they're trying to bring in and diversify as much as they can. They are also in a hurry to get this up and running. I think partially because Michigan just passed, so I think that's kind of a competition issue. They are hoping to get sales started January 1st.
It's a quick turnaround.
So their bill is like 600 pages long because they worked everything out. They put a lot of not everything, most things.
There's not a lot of administrative.
There's not a lot of wiggle room left for this. There's some minor things that need to be worked out, but for the most part, to get to scale as quickly as the governor would like them to be, they had to kind of figure everything out now.
Did they also take a look at the criminal aspects that we're doing here, whether it's expungement of records, stealing of records, and where did they land on that?
They actually made some compromises on that, but I believe they landed at 30 grams. I think that's right, is what's permissible in the new law. So anyone with a nonviolent conviction, 30 and less, can have their record expunged. Above that, and I believe that's automatic, which is a big concession because it's expunging your record is one thing, but putting the burden on the person to go through the legal process, it makes it harder on certain groups. And so I believe it's over 30 nonviolent. You can have the attorney general or maybe a lawyer can petition a judge to get your record expunged.
And you said the governor ran on this issue, but who was driving this? Was it pushed through the legislature? Was it the governor? Were they hand in hand on this? How did it get through?
I think it was there's a couple of legislators, and forgive me, I can't remember the names of the legislators who crafted this.
Wouldn't know them if you said them. They walked into this room and said hello.
But the ones who have been working on this for a few years, I think they deserve a lot of the credit of bringing the people together. And then with the new governor coming in who was in favor of this and ran on this issue, I think it was a partnership that they all kind of were able to get this across the finish line.
Fast forward, rewind a little bit to New York. What's been the stumbling block here? Because as a reporter watching the governor make his big speech in which he formally came out, so we're going to do this in 100 days, I thought, okay, sure, I believe it.
Right.
6 months later, we're not there. What's been the holdup in New York?
Well, I think in New York, in a lot of states, the devil's in the details. I think that there is support for legalizing adult use marijuana, but it's how we're going to do it. A lot of the fighting or stumbling blocks seems to be over how we're distributing funds, how are we dealing with equity issues. These aren't small issues. No. And, New York's a diverse state, so trying to make sure that everyone agrees to the terms. There's also the issue of a lot of counties have already said they're going to opt out. So that takes those legislators potentially out of the equation because there's no reason to be in favor of something if you're going to reap none of the benefits from it. If your county is not going to get, or a district is not going to get any tax revenue from this, and your community has said they're against it, voting for it is probably not in your best interest.
Just to interrupt you for a second.
Sure.
Is that opt-out language, do any other communities, any other states have a similar provision to
Yes.
that? And so that's pretty common?
Yes, I think every state has an opt-out. Now, it varies on what level of government can opt out. Mostly it's counties. I know in New York, the original proposal was a cities of over 100,000 population. But every state allows that. And it's actually, I'm working on a piece that shows the maps of the states who have implemented, where you'd be surprised how many counties have opted out in Colorado, for example.
Are there any common trends between the counties that opt out, whether they're conservative, rural, urban, whatever?
It's kind of all over the place. Urban does tend to opt in more often, but that's not always the case. It really depends on the political landscape. And a lot of counties in these states that have already implemented opt out just to kind of see what's going to happen and then may change their position. So they want to spend a little more time with the issue before they jump in.
Okay. And it didn't get done in the budget. We are still have lawmakers talking about it, but the governor's pretty much thrown in the towel on it. You know, is there any way to get this across the finish line at this point, do you think?
Right. I think there is. You know, I don't know exactly what that is going to be. It could be, the best case scenario I see for this is getting rolled into a bunch of other bills.
What would you call something like that? Maybe a big ugly?
Yes. I think there's a chance for it that. I think a standalone bill has a little more trouble right now.
Is it a harder vote?
I think it's a harder vote because it's very clear what you're taking responsibility for.
Right.
So, you know, I'm not going to say never based on what I've seen. The vote, it's close, the number of people, but now the groups who are against implementing marijuana have targeted those people. So, you know, I don't know. There's only a week left.
Well, and it seems with big uglies, this wasn't my analysis, but somebody smarter than me pointed out that when you create a big ugly, you need to have one, you know, leg on the stool who has to have it.
Right.
And it's hard to imagine the governor, the assembly, or the Senate saying, this is a make or break issue for me. I have to have this in a big ugly. So, you know, I don't know what the constituency is that pushes this forward.
Yeah, my guess is that maybe in the next budget session it has a better chance. But I'm not saying it's not going to make it across the finish line. They're getting close, but it could happen.
And then, I guess, fast forwarding then to the next budget cycle, does it become more difficult to get through if it's an election year? If it's 2020 when this is right, you know, with the election coming up, whereas if you do it in 2019, you've got, you know, some time to, you know, finagle, finesse, and try to move past this if you're a worried elected official?
Maybe, but I could also see 2020 presidential election, some of the attention being distracted on what the state is doing.
Fair.
And being focused on national issues. It could happen in 2020. It could happen now. I don't want to say anything definitive because they'll prove me wrong either way.
And you know, you talked about some of the issues, the unintended consequences, which seem to be things that have been popped up here as well. There've been a lot of talk about the impact of driving, access for under 21 people being increased. Is there any silver bullet that can address those concerns that you've seen, or is it kind of you're going to have to step into the breach one way or the other?
Yeah, I think in some ways it's just kind of hoping for the best. The best arguments I've seen have been kind of comparing marijuana to alcohol.
Okay.
That there are unintended consequences of that as well. But yeah, it's difficult. That's why it's so hard for legislators to say, I'm on board with this, is that there's just a lot of uncertainty. You can use data, you can look at the other states who have implemented to see what has actually happened. Some of the data claims have been a little fuzzy that have been used on both sides.
I'm shocked.
To kind of prove their point.
Shocked that it wouldn't be an honest debate about this.
But, you know, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, on the federal level, there's movement on this issue.
What's that?
So right now in Congress, they are debating the States Act, which would allow financial institutions to give support to the marijuana business, which a lot of states are a little hesitant on this because it's hard to tax money when there's no banking statements and it's kind of the honor system of your ledgers of how much money you've earned. And it might make it easier for people to get loans to go into the business and make it more easily accessible to others and regulate it better.
Is the revenue aspect something that could play a role in helping motivate New Yorkers? I mean, this time around, the $2 billion deficit we allegedly have wasn't a big enough concern to push through marijuana legalization. Could in the future that be a helpful aspect?
I mean, yeah, I think that's always one of the arguments that in favor is that. And one thing I think that took the pressure off New York was New Jersey also kind of falling apart at the same time with theirs. If New Jersey had made it across the finish line, I think New York might have as well, just because you don't want to lose that market.
Although we did that in sports gambling.
Well, that's true, but we'll see.
So don't put it past us.
I think, there is some pressure there to get it done. But the revenue is a big argument in favor. I know it's not going to solve every budget problem. That's the problem that
it's a tiny amount.
The proponents make it seem like it's going to fix all problems. Right. But it certainly helps when, states are still recovering from the recession and other volatility in their budgets.
We've seen in recent days groups like the Farm Bureau come on board, and one could see them as being influential to these marginal members who might live in suburban or rural districts.
Yep.
Do things like that sway people? Can they theoretically get people across the finish line?
I think they came into the debate a little late to have a lot of influence. They could, I don't know, but I think they rightfully were kind of waiting to see how things played out. But I don't know how influential that's going to be in the last 2 weeks of the legislative session.
Oh, that's a good point. Anything else to think about as we go into the final 3 days of the legislative session when this comes out?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's just a wait and see. They have surprised me before with what has passed, so it certainly could happen. If I was betting, I'd say probably not this year.
Seems like there's a lot of agreement that decriminalization is the way to go, as well as some sort of commercial aspects. Why couldn't decriminalization be done as a first step? Why does it all need to be done together in your mind? Why do the legislators think they have to do that way?
I mean, it certainly could be done that way. There's nothing to stop it from being.
There's no conversation about that. That was never on the table at all.
I think that the financial gain is the big motivator for a lot of people. Okay. And so decriminalization is a social justice issue, obviously, and certainly would help potentially a lot of communities that have been targeted, but the state doesn't get a lot out of it. So
sounds like self-interest.
Yes. Wow. So it could definitely be a piecemeal approach, but I think they only get so many bites at the apple, and if they want to try to get as much as they can passed, they will do it in one big bundled piece of legislation.
To me, it kind of is reminiscent of the Child Victims Act, where there were elements of it that you could have passed, with a Republican Senate, whether it was extending certain criminal statutes, getting the look-back period on lawsuits was a heavier lift, and it seemed like they didn't want to do one without the other because they thought they might not revisit it.
Right.
So is it that kind of...
That's obviously a possibility as well, is that, one step might not lead to the next step. Gotcha. So, they're considering a lot of issues. There's a lot of pieces of legislation they're trying to get done in any given year. So they might worry they might not get another shot right away.
Are we surprised that no legislators have been leading fact-finding missions to Massachusetts for obviously research purposes only?
Well, it's interesting. A lot of New Jersey actually did do fact-finding missions to Nevada.
Okay.
Nevada was the fastest up until potentially Illinois from... I call it ballot to bud, from how quickly they implemented it.
Strong alliteration.
And so, New Jersey actually went to Nevada to see how they did things. So maybe in the future they will check out, if this doesn't pass, how things are going in Massachusetts.
I mean, it's a pretty easy road trip to Pittsfield, and I got room for 3 people in my car.
Well, I'm sure they'd appreciate the offer.
Well, Heather, I really appreciate you walking me through your report, which people can find on the Rockefeller website, or by visiting State Street. You got all sorts of reports downstairs. Mm-hmm. So thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
And that's our show. My thanks to Heather for joining me on the podcast. If you're enjoying the podcast, please leave us a rating and a review wherever you download the show. It helps other people discover the show and validates my existence. Until next time, podcast adjourned.
Just heard I tried to get you.
Ah! This day sucks!